Hey gang, Murphy here. This week's episode on Game of Crimes is a special and extremely important topic. We'll talk with a father whose police officer's son committed suicide. Did you know that more police officers in the United States die from suicide than any other cause? It's an issue that should not be an issue in modern day society, but here we are. I'm providing this caveat because our guest today, Brian Sizemore, is completely open, honest, transparent about what happened with his son, Lucas Sizemore. You may want to have some tissues ready. I'm telling you, today's is a tearjerker, and that's why I'm providing this caveat. Brian will share everything about what he and his family have gone through, and it's very raw, emotional, and eye-opening. But you also hear about how Brian and his family have taken this tragedy and turned it into something positive. I'm asking that you listen to this entire conversation and then share it with your family and friends. We already have so many issues in our world today. Police suicide should not be one of those. Also, we had a third person who participated in the interview, Jared Murphey, who is the acting special agent in charge of Homeland Security in Detroit. Unfortunately, we had some Wi-Fi and download issues, and Jared's parts could not be salvaged. Jared, brother, I apologize for that. But I want to personally thank you for everything you've done and are continuing to do to assist the Sizemore family and bring awareness to the issue of police suicides. Thanks for joining us again today on Game of Crimes. May God bless our men and women in blue. Hey, everybody. Welcome back to the next episode of Game of Crimes with Murph in the Morning. This is a very special and different episode this week. You know, I've had a lot of victims on here, or I've had several victims on here, crime victims. But today, you see, I've got a representative family member of a victim. That's Brian Sizemore. Welcome to the Game of Crimes. Glad to have you on here, Brian.
Thank you, Murph. Thanks for having us.
So Brian here is 25 plus years as an AT&T employee.
Mm-hmm.
Might wonder why he's here on Game of Crimes. Well, he created what he calls the Lucas Foundation. Our listeners, thank you folks for coming back every week. I can't go by without not thanking you for what you do. I know you're giving me your time, and on Patreon, you're giving me your money. So I truly appreciate that. I hope you'll tell your friends. If you are listening to this and you haven't gone over to YouTube yet, please go over there where you can see the video portions of these. And while you're there, hit that subscribe button for me. We're trying to blow that channel up this year. Now, to get into what today's topic is, and this is something that I'm particularly fond of. I haven't been a cop for 38 years, but we're going to talk about police suicide. How sad that has become, how almost epidemic it has become. It's something that we're all familiar with the military, that they average 22 suicides per day. Law enforcement is not at that level, but why should there be any suicides at all? It's horrible. And the more research I did after talking to Brian about this, the more it opens your eyes, but the more it kind of causes a lump in your throat, because these are our heroes. These are our men and women who are brave enough to put on a uniform to go out there and protect us. And I say protect us because I'm no longer in law enforcement. But these men and women are brave enough to go out there and protect us, people they don't even know, and many who hate them simply because they wear a uniform. They present authority. Who would come running if we didn't have law enforcement? Just keep that in the back of your mind, okay? So just to get started here, just so you folks know, we used to have the small town police blotter. I'm cutting that out today just simply because I don't want to waste more time on that. I want us to get into this topic. This is to inform you of what's going on, what you can do to help, and hopefully it startles a lot of people and gets more support going here. If you're wondering how we met, weeks ago, Jared Murphey sent me an email, and he said, there's a gentleman that you really need to talk to, and that's Brian Sizemore. Told me a little bit about his son, who, I don't want to get ahead of myself, but his name is Lucas Sizemore. He was a police officer, uniformed police officer with the Atlanta Police Department, and one night just went home and for some unknown reason committed suicide. We're going to get into the story. But here's what I like is Jared told me about this Lucas Foundation and asked if I'd help spread the word. Well, how can you say no to something like that, with considering my background? So we set up this conference call, got to meet Brian on a call. just throw it out here right now. You guys hear me talk about this all the time. But if you're considering suicide or you're going through a mental crisis, there is a hotline for you. You're going to hear, we're going to repeat this regularly throughout this interview. All you have to do is dial 988. You can call 988. You can text 988. You can chat on 988. It's open. It's free. It's confidential. They speak English and Spanish. They will confidentially talk to you and provide you with someone to talk to help you get through whatever crisis or suicidal thoughts that you're going through. And that's not just cops. That's for everybody in the United States and all its territory. So just keep that in mind, 988. Okay. Also, I asked Brian here if I could put this number out. And this is how dedicated he is to bringing attention and awareness to police suicide. He's willing for me to put his personal phone number out so that if any of you law enforcement professionals out there and you're having issues or you want more information, you can call Brian direct. And his number is 734-250-1962. Again, 734-250-1962. That's how dedicated Brian and his family are to doing everything they can to support law enforcement. So maybe we can stop the stigma of police suicide. Okay, that was a long introduction, wasn't it? Brian, if you would, let's just get started here. Tell us about yourself, where you grew up, your family dynamics, where you went to school, how you got involved with AT&T, a little bit about your family.
Okay, I'm from a couple small towns right here south of Detroit. Lived here, born and raised all my life, never moved away. Mom and dad, brothers and sisters, all still with us. Was fortunate to grow up in a middle class family where my parents worked and had decent jobs. So, I mean, we weren't rich by no means, but we weren't struggling for to put food on the table and for him to feed us and stuff like that. Attended high school and college here in the area. Like I said, never really moved away. Got married to my wife, Marie, and was fortunate enough to go take a test downtown Detroit at the Bell Building, the Michigan Bell Building. And this is back in the 90s, and passed a litany of tests on a Saturday. It was probably 8 or 9 tests. And at the time, it was the company was called Ameritech. This is the whole Baby Bell breakup thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's now AT&T, and I've been there going on 26 years. My wife, Marie, is a school teacher here in the area. We, like our parents, we've been fortunate to have good, steady jobs with benefits and everything that comes with those type of jobs, and be able to raise Lucas and his younger brother, Evan, here in the area, a stable middle-class home. And like I said, we've been blessed.
So would you agree if I said, you guys, you're a typical American family?
Yeah. Like I said, we've had a lot of breaks go our way. We were always of the opinion you're going to get out of this life what you put into it. So you work your butt off. You go to school, you get an education, you find a job. And again, both of us have been blessed not only to find a good job, but jobs that we both love. And it makes it easier to go to work.
Yeah, it does. There's that old saying, find a job you like, you'll never work a day in your life.
Right.
I found that job. I never thought I'd leave law enforcement, to be honest with you. But you just offered up some words of wisdom there, true words of wisdom, and the fact that you get out of life what you put into it.
Mm-hmm.
You go in expecting everybody to hand you something. Yeah, you probably might have a little tough time there. But those who step up to the plate and do for themselves and dedicate themselves and show loyalty and commitment to what they're doing typically ended up being successful. So, and it's funny too. We were talking before we started recording today, and tell us about was it your grandfather that was in law enforcement?
Yeah. So when we had our conference call, you had mentioned that you were from West Virginia, and it struck a bell because my dad's family is from West Virginia, and my grandfather had passed away before I was born, but it was always ironic to me that my grandfather was a sheriff's deputy in Mingo County, West Virginia, and then they moved to Cleveland, Ohio, and he went to work for the railroad. Now, my dad retired from Norfolk Southern with 40 some years, and my uncle Bob retired as chief of detectives of a local police department here. So it's just crazy how those things work out like that.
It is, and the commonality, everybody, is I was a city cop for 6 years, and then I was a railroad police officer with Norfolk Southern for 6 years before I joined DEA. So there's probably in that lineage in West Virginia, we might be related, Brian. I mean, our family trees in West Virginia kind of go like that.
Yeah,
Uh,
it's possible.
I got to tell
It's
you though,
possible.
Mingo County, that's one of the toughest counties in West Virginia.
My dad goes back there every once in a while. There's still a lot of family there. One of these days, I'm going to get my butt down there. I've done some research on the family and the area, and like back the coal mining wars and all Hatfield and McCoy's. That's all in that region. So it's got some history.
It's funny you mentioned that part because we didn't talk about that. But my great grandfather is John C. Hatfield. My great grandmother is Lucinda McCoy, and they're the two that married that ended up stopping the Hatfield McCoy feud.
Mm.
So it's when we talk about that thin blue line, there was a great possibility I could have gone to the other side of that thin blue line.
Right.
Based on my lineage there. But it's just a small world. The degrees of separation, there's no such thing as 6 degrees of separation anymore. I think it's down to about 2 or 3.
Right.
So, all right. And let's see, you mentioned you had another son, right?
Yeah, Evan. Evan is Lucas's younger brother. Evan now is 22. So he was 3.5, 4 years younger than Lucas.
And if you wouldn't mind, I'm real proud of what you told me he's getting ready to do.
Yes, Evan is currently doing all of the preparation, and probably by the end of this year is going to apply to be an Army Ranger.
God bless him. No greater calling than going out and protecting your fellow man, in my opinion. And there's a book called the Bible that kind of supports that as well. Before we go any further, Brian, if you would, just give us an idea about Lucas, how he grew up, what his interests were. You've already mentioned that you have one other son. What did he like to do as a kid? Did he play sports?
Yeah.
Where did this interest in law enforcement come from?
That, as far as we can tell, we never recognized his interest in law enforcement until he was attending Eastern Michigan. That's when he first started to talk about it, at least to us. But he grew up as a normal kid, little league, t-ball. He was into martial arts a little bit and tried a lot of everything. He wrestled for a couple years. He played football. He played golf. As he got older, well, take that back. He was like my hunting buddy. He's an avid white-tailed deer hunter, and I started even though he wasn't legal to hunt yet, I started taking him with me, probably when he was 8 years old, just so he would get used to the routine, the waking up, how to field dress a deer and being out in the woods. And he really, he took to that like a duck to water. He loved it. Went to high school locally here, played sports in high school, and then he enrolled at Eastern Michigan University, got his degree there. And like I said, that's where I want to say maybe when he was a sophomore, maybe a junior, showed the interest and then was involved with the internship with HSI. And that's when it really took off, because you have kids, you can tell that they're excited and they're interested, and they come home and they're telling you stories. And so that's when we really knew that some part of the country, some agency, some department somewhere was going to get him.
What was his major in college?
He majored in criminal justice.
There you go. So he graduates from college. How in the world did he go from Detroit to Atlanta?
He, again, a lot of family in law enforcement. His uncle, Paul, had just retired from HSI. And that's actually how me and Jared and I and his family kind of bumped into each other. We were at a fundraiser, and Jared's wife, we were speaking with her, just chatting, and she had mentioned that Jared worked for HSI. So we knew we were going to want to talk to him at some point during that day, because we wanted to mention Marie's younger brother, Paul. And when we did meet him, I said, well, maybe Paul. Paul just retired. And he's like, oh yeah, I knew Paul. We worked on some things together. And I said, well, then if you knew Paul, you knew Lucas. Lucas was our son. And that's when Jared connected the dots and figured out who we were. But getting back to Luke, he I got a lot of friends right here local that are in law enforcement, local police departments. My cousin at the time was chief of police in a department here. And if Luke wanted to stay in this area and join one of them departments, he would have had a job. All he would have had to do was go apply. He had the credentials, he had the education, he had the right attitude. I'm sure he would have got a job. But he heeded the advice, I guess, that he wanted to hear, and he wanted to catch bad guys, not write traffic tickets. I don't know how else to say it. And they all told him, if that's the kind of career you want, you have to, it's got to be a federal agency or it's got to be a big city. And he at the time, the I guess the rules were, if you had no law enforcement experience, the only federal agency that you could apply to is the Border Patrol. And he was a little reluctant for that at that point. So he started applying to the major cities. I know, like, for sure he applied to Atlanta. I think he applied to Dallas. I don't think he applied anywhere on the East Coast. I'd have to look. But anyway, Atlanta emailed him and sent a package for some testing for him to do. And he went down there and took a bunch of tests and physicals, and they vetted him. And probably within a week after that, they offered him a position and told him the academy class that if he was going to take the position, what day he would report and what day he would start. And that's how it started.
Wow. So he wasn't afraid of leaving the nest, was he? He was ready to get out there and experience.
Think what he wanted to do going in. He probably realized that back when he was still at Eastern Michigan, that to be the type of law enforcement officer that he wanted to be, he wasn't going to be able to do that at home. He kind of knew he was going to have to. And that's not to say 5 years from now he could have made his way back to Detroit with another agency. I think that's what he was aiming for.
So you think he's probably going to get some local experience and then try for feds?
Yep.
That sounds familiar. When he started the academy, did he stay in touch with you, tell you with some of his experiences and things like that?
Yeah, even so, while he was in the academy and even after he graduated and was on the job, I talked to him minimum once a day, especially when he was actually on the job. Our shifts kind of overlapped. I was going in as he was getting off and vice versa. So we were able to talk quite a bit. But even when he was at the academy, the Atlanta Police Foundation and the Atlanta Police Department have a wonderful facility. It's called Unity Place. And it is I want to say it's 4-story, maybe 5-story apartment apartment building that their 2 bedrooms are the smallest. I think the largest might be a 4-bedroom apartment, and furnished, washer and dryer, everything in the apartments. And those are for the police recruits. And the rent is really cheap. The utilities were included. And when he moved in, like any young man moving in, I had to help him move some stuff in there. And there were issues like with the drains or something. So he was calling me about stuff like that. But he really liked it. I mean, he was all of those recruits are lucky to have a facility like that. It gives them a safe place to stay. They don't have to worry about paying those exorbitant rent fees or living so far out of town that they have a hour commute to get to the academy.
Yeah, well, in Atlanta, an hour could be like 8 miles.
Exactly.
Traffic is horrible.
It is.
I was stationed in Atlanta twice in my career with DEA, and now we've got 2 of our 4 children live in Atlanta, and 3 of our 5 grandchildren are there. And
yeah,
oh my goodness, it just gets worse and worse. The traffic does.
I love the area. I love the town, but that traffic is something else.
Oh, it just doesn't seem like anything's being done to address it. They've talked about it for my first time there was in 1998, and it was horrible then. And here we are in 2025, and it's still horrible. And I don't see much improvement down there.
It just gets more crowded there too. More people.
Yep. But I tell you what, we did love Atlanta. I worked a lot with the Atlanta Police Department. Had some of their officers assigned to the first time I was there, assigned to the HIDA groups and then later in the OSTEF strike force. Have the utmost respect for them. Some really dedicated, true professionals there.
Yep. Yes, they are.
Now, so Lucas started the academy in August 22, I believe.
Yep, that sounds right. Yep.
And then graduated April 23.
Yeah, and I don't know if this is I don't know if it's a state of Georgia thing or if this is every state. He had done all the academy work. They swear them in, issue them their firearm, and then they are on the road with a training officer doing their field training, but they have to be sworn law enforcement officers to do that. So when he graduated in May, it's pretty much done. This graduation was just a ceremony.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I got to tell you, I'm encouraged to hear that they provide housing, because when I was back down there, and this has been years ago, the starting salary for an Atlanta police officer qualified them for food stamps.
Right.
That's how low the pay was.
So what Luke told me was, and this is years before he joined the academy, is the way or the reason that started is, and I don't know if this is true or not, they found academy recruits living in their vehicle because it was too expensive for rent, or you had to live outside the city, and they did. You know what it's like being in the academy. You don't want to be late. So some of them were living in the vehicles, and the police foundation stepped up, the city stepped up and built this facility for them. It's so successful. I know there's a waiting list, and I believe they're trying to build another one.
Excellent. That's so encouraging to hear. But that's the dedication of the people that choose a law enforcement career, that you're willing to do that.
Mm-hmm.
When we were rookies, we didn't want to go home at nighttime because we were afraid we was going to miss some excitement that was going on in the job. And that's, when you're married, that's not real conducive for a marriage. The wife doesn't quite understand who your work wife, the job. That's what, when people contact me and ask me if I have any advice about joining the police department or law enforcement, the advice is be prepared for a lifestyle change. This is not a 9-to-5 Monday through Friday. This is a job that will take over your entire life. And if your wife is not on board, or your significant other, your spouse, is not on board, it might be a short-lived marriage. It just consumes your entire life. It becomes a lifestyle. When I retired from DEA and I told my children about it, my oldest son, who lives in Atlanta, he got real quiet on the phone. He's like, "Dad, you are DEA. What do you think you're going to do after DEA?" Because they knew I never wanted to retire. But it just, fortunately, a thing called narcos came along, so that worked out pretty good. When Lucas was in the academy, did he tell you some of the funny stories that went on in the academy, some of the stupid things that happened there? Because it happens in every academy.
Yeah, the physical stuff, the running, they had an obstacle course that they had to complete, and at the end of the obstacle course was this, I don't know, it's like a 12-foot wall or something. As soon as the recruits come over that wall, the instructors are sitting there with pepper spray and they're getting blasted in the face, and then they all share like what's supposed to be the best remedy for that, baby lotion, milk, whatever. I heard the Johnson & Johnson baby shampoo is supposed to get it off of you and get it off of your skin. And he even told me, he's like, that was the worst thing that he went through at the academy, was that pepper spray. It was painful. Yeah. But again, like I said, I talked to him so much, Steve, that I remember this one story, and I brought it up one time when I was speaking at the academy, and you could see his classmates who come, they're sitting there and they start giggling because maybe I wasn't supposed to know that story, but they'll giggle. So there was a recruit that was very apprehensive to drive the police vehicle in the manner that the instructors were telling them to do it. Aggressively, I'm assuming very aggressively. They have to do a certain maneuver, and this recruit was being super apprehensive, and it's come now to pass or fail. The instructors are on the radio kind of getting in on this recruit, and so they do it. They get into the accelerator on this cruiser, and Lucas told me, said, next thing you know, we hear this big loud crash, and we look around the corner, and the whole police cars in the ditch, wrecked. So I mentioned that. I was like, hey, just take your time. Don't wreck no police cars. And then that you could see his classmates will start laughing. Yeah.
Crazy.
And funny stories about the apartment too, the apartment complex. You could imagine 4 stories of 20-something police recruits, co-ed, all in one building. That I wouldn't have wanted to be the property manager or the sergeant or whoever was in charge of that facility.
I agree with you 100%. Well, that would be those would be stories that we'd put over on the Patreon subscriber channel for Game of Crimes. Right. Probably don't want to talk about those here. Brian, you're talking about that obstacle course. But when I went through the academy, DEA Academy was using the FBI facilities at that time. We now have our own academy there on the Quantico Marine Corps base. But they had this obstacle course out next to the track. And you go for a 3 to 5 mile run, then you come back and pick 2 teams, one team of good guys, one team of bad guys. The good guys would have to go over the obstacle course next to the track. And then when you got off the last obstacle, you had to chase the bad guy around the track. And then when you graduated, they had the Marine Corps' Yellow Brick Road. And I'll be honest with you, I looked at that more as an adventure, just a challenge to see if I could make it through there. And you're crawling through the mud. It rained on us that day. You're trying to scale these flat-faced rocks using a rope, and your feet are slipping. I mean, you're beating the crap out of yourself. We got to that where the rocks are. The line was backing up because guys were having a hard time getting up that slick rock. And, you start chit-chatting with each other. Well, I had managed to stay on my feet, and I wasn't real muddy. Next thing you know, I got guys throwing mud down the back of my T-shirt and my shorts. It just nasty by the time, you end up throwing most of your clothes away when you got back. But it's the camaraderie.
Mm-hmm.
That's where you're starting to build up trust in each other and respect for each other. And it's the same with Atlanta PD. That bond that they're building there is just, we call it the law enforcement culture, the blue brotherhood, sisterhood, whatever you want to call it. That's where it starts.
That's where that family starts.
Yep. So he comes out of the academy. What was Lucas's first assignment?
So I don't know at what point when he was still in the academy, they were all allowed to preference. In Atlanta, they call them zones. So he was allowed to preference a zone and a shift, and he got what he preferenced. He preferenced zone 4, evening watch. Geographically, I'm not that great with Atlanta. But he didn't want to be downtown. He didn't want to, be doing traffic duty or anything like that. He wanted to catch bad guys. I don't know how else to say it. So he got what he wanted, and he was happy.
That's pretty significant because most agencies aren't real keen on making you happy.
Right, and I don't know how many of them got what they wanted. I know his graduating class was about 30-ish, 30 officers. So I don't know if they were able to accommodate all of them or not.
Yeah. And I just pulled up Atlanta Police Zone 4, Southwest Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
So I never worked over in that area. I was stationed in Atlanta twice, but I don't remember us doing too much down in that area.
Yeah. I when he was on the job, I had a police scanner on an app on my phone. And it's again, going back to your children. So the Atlanta Police Department's frequency had all of APD, and I want to say it's the Georgia Tech Police Department on that frequency. And so all of those zones, the motor units, downtown, Georgia Tech, and every time he came on the radio, I instantly could pick out his voice. I heard that voice for 23 years, so I knew exactly. And it's all coded gibberish to a layperson, but I knew it was him.
Yeah. That's significant. The reason I'm smiling is when I first became a cop, maybe radio technology has improved significantly since then, but I couldn't understand a word that was coming across the radio. You have to develop an ear for it. And what I was having problems with was the static. I was riding with a training officer after I went through the academy there. And of course, this was back in the mid-'70s, so it's a long time ago. A lot of people say we were still using smoke signals back then to talk to each other. But you're with your partner and a call would come across and he'd say, "What do you think?" And I'm like, "What the hell did they just say? I didn't understand a word of that." So it took a while. And I'm sure the technology has increased. I remember when we went to 800 megahertz channels, that got a whole lot clearer. So maybe that's why it was so easy to pick up on Lucas's voice there for you.
Yeah, it never seemed staticky. It was always clear. Sometimes if whoever was on the radio wasn't speaking up or like really low tone, that could be difficult to hear. But
Mm-hmm.
for the most part, there wasn't problems.
Yeah. Do you remember any that you might remember? What was the most significant case that he worked that you remember, or he hadn't even gotten to that point yet?
Oh, he was a patrol officer. He was a rookie police officer. Things that he may have stumbled across. Once it turned into something significant, those officers are delegated to perimeter and crowd control and that type of stuff. But he did stumble across an IED, some type of explosive device outside of a grocery store.
Wow.
And alerted superiors to that. That was significant. Some of the stories about, and this is kind of a funny one. There was a homicide in an apartment building, and they responded, and he was delegated to crowd control. So the people that live there, and especially the kids, to keep them away from the area. And he said this little girl was probably 6 or 7 years old, blunt as hell, comes right up to him and asks him, "Do you like donuts?" And
of course we do.
He says to her, "Does it look like I like donuts?" And she said, "Yeah, it does." So one of his training officers told him, I think it was his field training officer, always keep some snacks, some bottled water, stuff like that in your bag, in your car with you, because you hand some kind of sweet snack to a kid like that, or a bottle of water, or a thing of cupcakes to a homeless person. Generally, you're going to get the information that you might be looking for, because you've helped their guard come down a little bit.
Hey, that's that's ingrained in us. If you don't like donuts, you can't be a cop. That's just
right. Yeah, he did. The kid loved his donuts.
Don't we all? Yeah, people make it's a stereotypical joke in law enforcement, but man, I still like my donuts. So do my grandkids. So he came on the street in April 23. That's right, May 23.
Yep. He was already doing his field training, but when they first assign him to the zone, there are like revolving areas within the zone, different cars, and then maybe a month or two before he passed away, he was given a dedicated beat and his own patrol car. So things were looking up for him.
So he's on solo patrol. Or is he riding with a partner?
Yes. Nope. He was solo.
So I know I'm beating around the bush here, but so now we're at January 9th, 2024. And ladies and gentlemen, this is a day I know that these gentlemen will never forget, and I probably won't either after this interview. Brian, if I don't know any other way to say this, would you just mind telling us what happened that day?
I was at work. Again, you mentioned I work for AT&T, and I remember it because Michigan's football team had played in the national championship game the night before and had won. So I had to throw that in there, by the way.
I was going to do a thumbs down, but we'll let it slide.
So he had moved into an apartment complex, had a 2-bedroom apartment. One of his classmates, one of his really good friends, one of his best friends, also lived in that apartment complex. They had walked around the corner to a little burger beer place, watched some of the game, came back, each went to their own apartment, and that kind of ended their evening. And then again, like shortly after 5 a.m., I'm at work. I got a routine when I walk in there. I set my personal stuff down on this semi-desk table thing, and I go out into the back of the building and see what's got to be done for the day. And one of my coworkers brought me my phone, and she said, "Evan is blowing your phone up. He's called like 5 times." Now, at the time, Evan was playing college football, and they practice at 6 o'clock in the morning. So he's got to be up. They have a team breakfast every day. So the fact that he was awake and calling was not odd, because I thought maybe something was wrong with his car, or he needed something, or whatever it was. So I called him back, and he answered the phone, and he says to me, "Dad, you got to sit down." And I said, I'm like, what are you talking about? He said, "Dad, you got to sit down." And excuse my language, but I said, "Evan, just fucking tell me." And he said, "Luke's dead." And I say this because like I still have never asked Evan. I don't know if this is what Evan actually said, or it's what my brain wanted to hear. But what my brain heard was that he accidentally shot himself. Mm-hmm. So now I begin processing all of that. I told him, stop everything you're doing, get your butt home. And then I called Marie, and it's just awful. Like she couldn't talk. She was obvious. She was incoherent, highly upset, crying, everything that you can think of. And I told her, I said, listen, I'm on my way home. I'll be there in a half hour. Drove home, and, especially I work for AT&T. They drill it into our heads so much. All the things that they tell us do not do while you're driving, I did every single one of them. Looking for flights. I can't remember if I texted anybody. It was still really early, so probably not. But I probably looked at my phone more than I did the road. Mm-hmm. Got home, and I walked. My garage is attached, so I walked into the garage and walked into the house, and I know Marie was still standing in the same spot she was standing when I called her. Without a better way to describe it, she was a mess. Like, and understandable. I didn't know what to say. I mean, what do you say? I told her, I said, I can't get a flight until early in the afternoon. I'm leaving right now, and I'm driving to Atlanta. And my mother-in-law lives with us, and she's 89, I think. So it would have been difficult for her to come with me anyway, but she immediately, she's like, nope, I'm not going. I can't go see him like that. I'm not going to go. And I said, okay, I'm going. I'm not waiting for a brother. I'm not waiting for anybody. I'm leaving right now. I'm going to Atlanta. And that's what I did. I got immediately in my truck and started driving down there.
And how long was that drive? That's not just a few hours.
It's 11 hours ish. I want to say it took me a little more than 10 hours to get to Marietta. And there's a McDonald's off that Marietta exit, and Chief Shearbaum from APD, I had talked to that guy probably a dozen times that day, and he had Lucas's best friend there, and one of his training officers there, and a couple patrol cars they actually would not let me drive. They got me out of my pickup truck, and one of the officers drove my truck, and then they bracketed us, and we went downtown to a hotel.
How did you know who to call at the police department?
Good question. And this is something that I bring up to those recruits when I speak to them, is I knew his roommate. I knew his buddies' names. I knew his training officers' names. I didn't have any of their phone numbers. Mm-hmm. And that's a two-way street. Like I tell them, set up a little call tree with 4 or 5 of your buddies. Make sure they got your family members' phone numbers. You get their family members' phone numbers. In case something happens, we have a number to call. And it could be as fast as like, hey, this is Lucas's dad. Oh, okay, everything's okay. I'll tell Lucas to call you as soon as he can. Everybody's okay. It could be just that fast, just to relieve the stress of a parent or a family member. Right. But while I was driving to Atlanta, I didn't know who to call. So I got the idea. It just popped in my head. I'm going to call the Zone 4 desk sergeant. And I called, and I never did get that young lady's name, but I'm assuming whatever their technology is, my caller ID came up, and she saw Sizemore. She didn't see Brian. And she said, Sizemore, we're getting all these reports. Are you okay? And I said, ma'am, this is Brian Sizemore. I said, I'm Lucas's dad. I said, I'm getting the same reports. I am in my truck on my way to Atlanta right now. And that it just was sheer coincidence that idea popped into my head. And that's what, it in hindsight, it was a good move, because that immediately put me in touch with someone at the police department. The commander of Zone 4 called me within maybe a half hour or so, and then maybe another half hour after that, Chief Shearbaum from APD called me to confirm that he had passed away.
Wow. And we're talking about an agency I just looked up of over 2,000 sworn officers.
Mm-hmm. And it was personal for Chief Shearbaum, I think, a little bit more so than maybe others, because the recruits with APD are, while they're going through the academy, they're assigned a job, like administrative, clerical, with whatever attachment, whatever job function they're attached to. Well, Lucas got assigned into the chief's office. So Chief Shearbaum, I'm assuming they didn't have any kind of detailed conversations or anything, but Chief saw him every single day. He was sitting there at a computer. So Chief knew him.
Well, first of all, my first thoughts are that Chief is a real leader.
Yes.
That he's taken the initiative. Apparently his people trust him enough that they call him and relay that message up when you talk to that desk sergeant.
Yes.
And then he's got the human factor side of him is important enough to reach out to you.
Yep. I've said before, if Evan did show an interest in law enforcement as his dad, it would be Atlanta that I would first want him to try. That's where I'd want him to go because of the leadership of that department.
Well, that's impressive, because it's sad to say it's not like that everywhere, and it's not even like that in all the federal agencies. As administrators come and go, just like they do with you guys, and their priorities, a lot of them don't have any law enforcement experience. They might be lawyers or whatever, but they don't understand that law enforcement culture. Not to talk about DEA overly, but that's something they created back when I was still on the job that was just phenomenal, sending some specific agents to get that additional training. Those agents that might have a sympathetic heart to start with, because that personality makes all the difference. And there's one guy there in Atlanta who's retired now, Dick Kroc, who was so instrumental in helping so many agents and their families get through difficult times. Dick still runs the DEA Survivor Benefit Fund, which still supports families of agents who've lost their lives in the line of duty or have suffered through very traumatic experiences. Even in retirement, he's still kicking butt and taking names in that position. Just to have the utmost respect for him. Brian, if you would, now you're in Atlanta, and if there's anything that you don't want to talk about here, please don't.
It's okay.
But and for our listeners, we discussed this before we ever started this recording, and Brian is very open and honest and wants the story out there. Now you get there to Atlanta, you got police officers with you. It's the evening time, I'm guessing, and
it was
you go to sleep.
There's some moments of that time in Atlanta that are still fuzzy. I didn't sleep. I don't think I didn't sleep that night. I was actually up walking the halls of the hotel. But when I got there, the police foundation, God bless them, had accommodations set up for me. They had a room for me. Man, I can't remember the hotel. Forgive me. In downtown Atlanta.
Mm-hmm.
And when I walked in, they, like I told you, they drove my truck, and we, bracketed us down to the hotel. I walked in, and Chief Shearbaum was there. His detail was there. There was a couple chaplains. There was some detectives. Every bit of 12 to 20 APD officers. And they had a conference room established up on one of the upper floors, and we went up there, and I knew that they were going to have to ask some questions, and I knew that's why the detectives were there, and they asked what you would expect. Did I know what had happened. Why did I know anything? Did I hear anything? Did he send any kind of text? Did he call? And there was none of that. Not one indication in any form. I knew that they would take his phone and his laptop and other stuff from his apartment to investigate those things themselves. And I expected that. And, we had no issues with that. The detective said we would get all of that back when they were done. And now, mind you, again, Chief Shearbaum knew him. So this, I do think this affected him. He sat right next to me. And I got a little testy, I would guess. And when they were done asking me questions, I had some questions. I said, I wanted to know, because at that point I don't know how he committed suicide. So I asked, and they told me. I asked if his organs were recoverable, and they were not. Just because I didn't know if he had that on his driver's license or not, but if it was possible for us to donate his organs, we would have. I asked who had his badge, because I wanted his badge, and Chief Shearbaum told me, "Don't worry about it. We got your."
Take your time.
He said that we would get it, and that 11-hour drive down there gave me a lot of time to think, and it was then that I asked Chief to step out in the hallway, and I told him, I said, "Listen, we don't want families to have to go through this anymore. We want to start a foundation, and I don't know what we're going to call it or any of that." And he's patting me on the back. He's giving me a hug, and he said, "We'll partner with you on anything you try to do. We're on board with you 100%. And they have been. I can't say enough about those people. So, as you were alluding to, that little meeting broke up, and I was exhausted. They had got me stuff to eat, and you take like 2 bites of something and you don't feel like eating. You try to sleep and you can't sleep. So most of that night I was roaming the halls of that hotel, just thinking, or everything. I had a notepad next to the bed, because now I'm in the middle of, I'm the oldest sibling in my family. As I said earlier, both my parents are still alive. I've never had to make any kind of funeral arrangements. I didn't know what to do or even where to start. So one of the chaplains helped me with that and gave me some names of places to call. And I'm in the middle of trying to do that, and things are popping in my head. I got to do this, I got to do that. And I'm writing stuff down, and I'm calling whole ride down there. I'm calling family members and having to tell them that he was gone.
That right there is repeatedly having to do that, because you got to call all your family. That's extremely difficult.
Yes, it was. It was a horrible day.
So when did they let you actually go to Lucas's apartment?
It was 2 days after. They spent that whole evening and the next day cleaning. They treat it like a crime scene. We had to, obviously he was at the medical examiner's, and once we were able to take him to a funeral home and make those arrangements. But eventually they did let me go to his apartment, and I have a pickup truck, and he had bought a Ford Fusion, I think it was. And this wasn't even planned, but if I had flown, I would have had to rent a truck or something, because we had to clean his apartment out. We had to get his belongings and stuff out of there, and his friends and a couple of the sergeants from Chief's detail, and those guys rounded up some boxes for me and garbage bags and all of those things to get his belongings. And Marie's younger brother, Paul, not so subtly, he's got colleagues in Atlanta, and he reached out at some point during the previous day and probably confirmed and got the details. So when he knew I was going to Lucas's apartment to clean his apartment out, he's like, "Do you want me to come? Do you want me?" I'm like, "Nope, I can do it. I got it." And he says, "Brian, don't go in the bathroom." So I'm not dumb. And by that point, I had knew where and how he had taken his own life. So I wasn't planning on going in the bathroom, but when we opened the door and walked into his apartment, the layout of his apartment is you open the door, you look down the hallway, the hallway's right there, the bathroom's right there to the left. So you can't miss it. I mean, it's right in front of you. And when I walked in, I could still smell him. I could smell his cologne, and he still had dishes, dirty dishes, and food in the refrigerator, and I could smell his clothes, and that was really hard. That was probably the first time that I really broke down, and I'm so glad that his friends were with me, because I wouldn't have been able to do that by myself. So that lasted a couple minutes, and I just went into like a work mode, and we got to get his stuff out of there. And so I started taking boxes and bags, walked through the kitchen towards the bathroom, and then that's when I noticed that they couldn't clean it. They cleaned. So your listeners know what happened is about between 4 and 4:30 on the morning of January 9th, he got out of bed, went into his bathroom, got into his shower, and put a pistol in his mouth and shot himself. The shower, the tub, they were able to clean. The shower curtain was no longer there. I'm assuming they threw it away. The floor, I would guess, had so much blood on it they couldn't clean it, so they ripped it out. They ripped the floor of the bathroom out and part of the hallway. The flooring was gone, and a lot of the molding, the baseboard molding and stuff like that. I don't know if that's normal or not, but it's definitely cemented that image that he had. His autopsy report mentioned the bruising from when he had fell, fatal fall, I think it was the wording. And so I put two and two together. After he shot himself, he probably fell out of the tub onto the floor, and that's where he bled. And then, so going through all the, you think all the stuff that's in your bathroom, all the cabinets, underneath the drawers, I'm just scooping stuff out and putting it in bags or boxes. And I did that. It took a couple hours. We did that. Every closet, his dressers, a lot of the furniture he had was hand-me-down type furniture from other people or family or whatever. So a lot of the bigger stuff we didn't bother taking. We filled up my truck, we filled up his car, and then the officers that were there helping me, I told them if they wanted any of that furniture, any of the recruits wanted any of that furniture, they were welcome to it. And I think some of the stuff that was left, they donated to a church.
Mm-hmm. How did you get his car back to Michigan?
His same young man, same best friend that lives there in that apartment complex, and another officer, I don't remember which one. The APD's honor guard, I don't know, probably a dozen or 15 officers plus those two. When they drove up for his funeral service, they drove his car up to me.
To this day, has there been any revelation, any idea what caused Lucas to take his own life?
No. The investigators, the detectives went through everything. Once we got all his stuff home, like one by one, like notebooks or papers, or I mean, we've went through everything that we took out of that apartment. So there was no indications, no texts, no emails. His friends were just as shocked. He didn't say anything to anybody. Marie and I had went to some grief counselors, and the one lady said if he was having thoughts like that, it's just the stars aligned at that specific day and time, and it happened.
So sorry for what you've gone through. Just to give there's more to the story, but just very quickly, I did some research before we started talking and found that between 2016 and 2022, on average, 184 cops commit suicide each year. And that's an average. And I got some of these numbers off of bluehelp.org, so give them a shout out where the information's coming from. But I also took a look at what the demographics were. And I don't know what I expected to find. Honestly, I've been blessed that I don't know any police officers that have committed suicide that at least that I remember. I'll be the first to tell you my memory is not as good as it used to be. But what I found on these demographics is that most police officers who commit suicide are white men, hugely vast numbers larger than women. Women is a very minor group in this category. They have an average of 16 and a half years service. And the ages, there's not a specific age range. It goes anywhere from 25 to 59 that's the most suicides that are committed. And where are these happening? Well, the highest state in the country is California with 109 suicides. New York is second with 83. Texas is third with 50. And Florida, where I live, is 49. It's spread out through the entire country. I clicked on West Virginia. They've even had 6 there. So it's I don't know. We got to do something different. The definition of lunacy is continuing to do the same thing over and over and expect a different outcome. So we got to do something different here. And so you and your wife you guys created the Lucas Foundation. What does Lucas stand for?
The acronym stands for Law Enforcement's United Crusade Against Suicide. And that was, again, when I was in Atlanta, I told Chief we wanted to start the foundation. We didn't know what we wanted to call it. That first sleepless night, I called home, and one of my family members had answered the phone, but so you can imagine the house is full of people. My sister-in-law, who's an attorney, was here. So I told her right then that evening, this still January 9th. I said, her name's Louise. I call her Lou. I said, Lou, I want to start this foundation. We're going to start this foundation. Don't know what we want to call it. But get the paperwork ready, because when I come home, we're going to send the paperwork in. And she did exactly that. The paperwork, the inspiration for the foundation came on the day he passed away. we figured out the name as I was driving home with his belongings, and then probably the next day we put the name and stuff on the paperwork, and it was sent into the state of Michigan.
And what is the purpose of the Lucas Foundation?
Exactly some of the things Jared just said, and you're right, Murph. God bless him, because there's he has been so helpful. I'll never be able to thank that dude enough.
Well, that's the Blue family coming up here.
Yes, absolutely. So it started. We. It's hard to put a finger on what is wrong. I'm not, and by no means, a mental health professional, but like Jared said, whatever. And I've never sat in on a training program or a curriculum that law enforcement might go through, or what is it that they talk about, or what is it that they tell you, but it's not working.
Mm-hmm.
How to fix that, I'm not 100% sure. I'm like I said, I'm not a mental health professional, but I do know that going back to Lucas's academy days, and this is an example of their mentality, and I think it is somewhat starts there, is all those recruits. Lucas, the public safety training center now is brand new, so he went through the academy at a different facility, an older facility, and all their running and physical fitness exercises, most of it was done on an asphalt road running through that academy. So his legs and his knees and ankles were constantly sore, and those I call them kids because when I look at them, they're so young looking, but they're not. They're brave men and women. They would roll an ankle and would not want to say anything to anybody because they would get sent to the infirmary, or they get sent to Grady for x-rays. And now you're in class 277. You missed 2 days for that. They have to roll you back to class 278 or 279 or 280 because you missed a couple of days and you got to repeat stuff. So they were absolutely reluctant to say anything about a physical injury. And how do you expect a recruit or a law enforcement officer to be brave enough to say something about having a mental health issue?
Mm-hmm.
Somehow we have to fix that. And then just as a human, I think if you need to talk to somebody, just me personally, if I need help, I want to talk to somebody that has been in my shoes, that knows exactly where I'm coming from, has dealt with the things that I have to deal with, and knows exactly what I'm talking about. There's, not to say anything negative about mental health professionals, because we need them. They need to be part of this, but they don't see what you guys see every day. They don't hear the things that you guys hear. The public doesn't hear the things or see the things that you guys see. And if I'm struggling with that, I want to talk to somebody else who has seen those things and may have struggled at some point themselves.
And on top of that, you still have your home life to deal with. And if you've got children, I used to have hair before I had daughters. And I say that half jokingly, but still they're starting when they become dating age. That just puts so much stress on a dad's life because you worry about your babies. I tell you what, buddy, I'm shocked I don't have tears running down my cheeks yet. I thought I was going to get a tissue there a couple of times. Thank you so much for what you're doing.
It's during that drive down there, I don't want to say I'm built different or anything like that. I'm not claiming that, but I got to a point where I think I realized that I will grieve him for the rest of my life.
It would be, I don't know if it'd be easy. I mean, we lost our son here, one of our children here a few months ago, and it's not easy. So I guess that's the wrong word to pick. But at the same time, it would be easy to step back and say somebody needs to do something about this. But you and your wife, you didn't just step back and let somebody else do it. You started a foundation here
Mm-hmm.
that there are psychologists out there, and maybe psychiatrists as well, who specialize in trauma events. And I'm thinking specifically, we had a guest on here back in February, Brent Cartwright, who was with Kansas City Police, was shot in the line of duty, working a lot of undercover. And he now goes around and speaks at conferences in conjunction with a psychologist. It's the first team I've heard like that. And he just speaks her praises because, he was.
What's the psychologist's name? Do you know? Do you
I,
remember?
I will get that for you. It's a strange last name that I'm not familiar with. I'll have to look it up, but I will certainly get that for you.
There's a lady in Atlanta that I'm trying to work on some things with, and she has some connections established with first responders and some police chief organizations. She does all of the officer wellness and mental health initiatives for APD and the fire department. Her name is Dr. Carla Moore, and she is wonderful. The first time that I spoke to the police academy there, we weren't kind of doing it together, but our segments were one after the other. So it tied in. And every time I've talked to her, everything she's doing, everything that she has done, and more importantly, how Chief Shearbaum and the police department there are receiving that and what they're doing to help push that forward is wonderful. I don't know what it's like in other police departments, but that one I would bet you is leading the nation, if not in the top 5 for what they're trying to do.
That's outstanding. That's very encouraging to hear. Just want to point out one other statistics here to our listeners is, and you can look this up yourself. Look up on Google traumatic incidents that a normal person goes through. And what you'll see is that the normal person will experience 3 to 5 traumatic events in their life. When you look at law enforcement, hang on, they encounter between 400 and 600 traumatic incidents just in their careers. That's just career-based events. Where a normal person goes 3 to 5, and cops are going through 400 to 600, and we wonder why we have a suicide issue. Man, if that doesn't open your eyes, nothing will.
Right.
Those of you that don't, you've heard me say this before, if you don't agree that something needs to be done, go listen to another podcast, because this is not the podcast that you need to be listening to. Game of Crimes is all about showing the sacrifice and the bravery and the commitment and the perseverance that law enforcement, military, and first responders have to do this damn job. Again, it's protecting your fellow man. So it just astounds me the stupidness that's out there when people say defund the police or all the crap that goes along with ignorant people. I'm going to guess you didn't come from a wealthy family, Brian. Is that right?
No, just middle class. Dad worked for the railroad for 40 years. So, with the money he brought home, that's what fed his family, his 4 kids, and my mom.
How are you funding the Lucas Foundation?
We have initially, and even now, a lot of the funding, a lot of the supplies, a lot of those things we pay for out of our pocket. Got no problem doing that. But we are now little by little starting to attract smaller local sponsors, and now starting to get some bigger national sponsors as well. There's several ways for people to donate. We usually have some type of small fundraiser going on here in the Metro Detroit area, but the relay that Jared really took by the horns and is really helping drive this is our first national event, and we're hoping to raise the awareness and get the word out mostly, but of course raise the funds to help with these training programs and stuff that we're trying to go after.
And I'm not ignoring you. What I'm doing is I'm actually making a donation right now just to show everybody how easy this is. This is how long it's going to take you. It's not a significant amount of money, but I'm going to guess every penny helps in this type of situation.
Every penny helps, every dollar.
So bear with me here, everyone. This is probably the most important thing I'm going to do all week.
And
you
Murph,
can do it too.
Someone I can't remember who said that to us. You get focused on corporations and large donors and large sponsors, which, don't get me wrong, we want every one of them. And you pray that one day you get a letter or an email saying that XYZ corporation is going to give you $1 million. But it's just as important to have 1 million people give us $1 each.
Okay. Just that's how long it took.
Yes, thank you so much.
Truly my honor. And if anybody's wondering where this is, if you want to find out more about this 1,000-mile run, holy cow, I don't even drive that far. I can't imagine running anything like that. But go to lucascrusade.org. So it's Lucas, Lucas, crusade.org. That's where you can sign up. That's where you'll get all the information you need. Do you have to be law enforcement to run in this, Brian?
Nope.
Yep. So it's open to everybody.
It's open to everybody.
And they're not asking you to run 1,000 miles, folks. They're asking you to run a leg of it. And I'm sure any part that you can do to participate in that is going to be greatly appreciated. Now, in the event that's happening on June 18th, so folks, I'll be in Detroit, or actually Pontiac. We're going to be at the UWM Sports Complex in Pontiac. And they have other events, like they've started this something I will never participate in, a polar plunge in the wintertime in the Detroit River. What do you have to be drunk to go do that? Or
no, it's probably not a good idea. That started kind of by accident. After Lucas's services, the Honor Guard, the Atlanta Honor Guard, was in town along with a lot of the officers, and there's supposedly getting in that cold water is therapeutic. It's good for your circulatory system, your muscles, etc. And there's a group here of law enforcement officers that do that regularly through the winter, 3-4 times a week. So long story short, I talked to Chief Shearbaum the morning after his Lucas's service. He was already at the airport. And he indicated to me, like, we're just chit-chatting, and he said that Deputy Chief Starzik from a local department here was taking some of his guys, the Honor Guard guys, to go do a polar plunge. And Chief kept talking, and I said, hold on. I said, back up a second. I said, your guys are going to go do this? And he says, yeah, they're supposed to pick them up at like 7 o'clock. And I said, 7 a.m. It's still dark in January. I said, I'm going to go watch this. So I went, and it was brutal, and it was funny, and all of those things. I felt so bad for those guys. Well, fast forward a couple of weeks, and I called Deputy Chief Starzik here locally. I said, Andy, I got to tell you something funny. And he says, what's that? I said, Evan wants to go in that water. And he said, oh, great. I'm like, that's not the funny part. I said, if Evan's going to go, I'm going to go. Oh. And then he started laughing, and then he turned it into this law enforcement thing. And lo and behold, a month later, 2 days before what would have been Lucas's birthday, we got 48 people to go. I think it was 48 to go in the water. And it is as bad as it looks. So again, it's one of them things that you think is a coincidence, but it's bigger than that. It's higher than that. The first time we did it, it was 2 days before his birthday, and we really didn't even consider that. But that led into now every year the annual polar plunge will be on the Saturday closest to his birthday. And wow. And Jared and a bunch of law enforcement personnel came and participated this past February, and we were fortunate to get Faraz from WXYZ to come, and he actually got in the water, and that was brutal to watch. So it's a struggle, and it's kind of fun, to see.
Yeah.
I guess that's kind of cruel to say it. It's fun to watch someone struggle, get in and out of that water, but it's something that brings us all together, even if only for a few minutes.
You know what? Most people enjoy being part of a team, doing things together with other people,
Exactly.
even when it's crazy.
Exactly.
And I think when it's for a good cause, why not? So we're coming up to the end here, ladies and gentlemen, and you heard us talk about donating. I just showed you how quick you can do it. You go to either the law enforcement's plural, an S on the end of law enforcement's United Crusade Against Suicide.com. It's easier to Google Lucas Foundation. That's how I found it originally. Or you can also go to lucascrusade.org and you can make donations there. A minute or two, there's one of the best causes I've ever heard is to try to help our first responders out there. So we talked about donation. What other things can you do, even though you're not in law enforcement? Well, support our law enforcement and our first responders. Well, how do you do that? Speak up when people say defund the police. Speak up for what's right. Don't be bashful. Tell them how stupid that sounds. If you don't think it's stupid, go to these communities, which some people might call the hood, where people live who don't have the financial means to move out. They're forced to live there because they can't afford anything better. You think they don't want the police around? That's who's protecting them. You think those punks and street thugs are protecting them? Absolutely not. So get up and speak of your own mind. Do your own research when it comes to any topic. Whatever you do, don't let the media or famous people tell you what to think. We've all got a brain. God gave us all a brain. We can do our own research and make up our own minds. So don't believe everything that Murph tells you. Just do it yourself. Don't let others tell you. Donate again. We talked about that a couple times and we'll continue to. Volunteer your time for certain events like this. These guys are going to need food and water along this route, running 1,000 miles. Well, if you've got the resources, what if you donated a couple cases of water to the local law enforcement agencies that are supporting this to help them out? And on top of that, talk to your friends and your family and get them involved as well. That's just a couple things that Murph came up with before we started recording here. I can't imagine a more worthy cause. So before I let you guys go, any words of wisdom or advice you got for us? Any last statement you want to make here?
Yeah, Murph, I just want your listeners to remember, like, when you're talking about law enforcement officers, from whatever agency or department, whatever part of the country, that's somebody's spouse. That's somebody's dad or wife or mom. That's somebody's son or daughter. Mm-hmm. They're human beings, and every one of them's a hero. And remember that when you talk to those people, and when you guys talk about support, it doesn't have to be monetarily. Just you see that law enforcement officer somewhere, just say thank you, pat him on the back, hand him a bottle of water, something mm-hmm. as simple as that. You see guys. I'll use Atlanta for example. You see one of them guys downtown directing traffic. It's hot in Atlanta. And they got dark blue uniforms on. Hand that guy a bottle of water. Hand him a Gatorade. Say thank you. That goes a long way.
It really does. It really does. Thank you doesn't seem sufficient here, Brian, but thank you so much for sharing the story of Lucas, the tragedy that your family has gone through. And like you said, it's something you'll never get over. God bless you and your family. And Jared, for stepping up and grabbing the torch and running alongside Brian and his family here. That's a extremely honorable thing to do.
Yes.
You're not getting paid out of this. Nobody's getting paid out of this. This is all going towards trying to get help for our law enforcement professionals out there when they experience traumatic events, so that hopefully we can reduce the number of suicides that are going on in our law enforcement community. Once again, the suicide crisis, the National Lifeline telephone number here is 988, ladies and gentlemen. Just dial 988. You can text it. You can chat with them. They have professionals, or if it's not a professional you talk to, they will get you to a professional. It's confidential. Don't hesitate. If you need help, call and get help. You don't have to go this alone. I know that's getting to be a cliche nowadays, but it's the truth. If you want to know more about the Lucas Foundation, Like I said, the easiest way is to Google Lucas Foundation, find it that way. You can find the Lucas Crusade if you want to know more about the run and you want to apply to run along with everybody. On Instagram, I found them and Facebook and TikTok. I found this, everything's at the Lucas Foundation. On X, Foundation Lucas. And on LinkedIn, there you can even find the Lucas Foundation. You can find Brian Sizemore and you can find Jared Murphey all on LinkedIn. So come over, show them some love, show them support. As always, I'm doing this a little different. I'm not dividing the interview into two parts because it's just too important to divide up. I want everybody to listen to this entire interview, and I know it's rather long, but thank you so much for continuing to come back. I usually end up with my stupid little saying, and why not say it again here? I know why you folks continue to come back every week, because you enjoy playing the biggest, the baddest, the most dangerous game of all, as you heard today. That's the game of crimes. God bless. See you next week.
Thank you.